A while ago, a very long while ago, I was reached out to about the possibility of maybe painting a mural in a local coffee shop. The start of that ended up getting put off a couple of times for various reasons. This coffee shop is a non-profit as well as a coffee shop, so it's not just a business that can choose to shut down for a couple of weeks, let me finish the mural, and open back up. They provide community services to local youth, including housing, free showers, free snacks, etc. We also had to apply for a grant to help fund it because, again, this is a nonprofit. They can't just hand me $2,000 from their normal budget and be done with it. A lot of things needed to happen in order to get this started. Now, I didn't do a perfect job of filming this. There was a lot of stuff at the very beginning that happened sort of haphazardly, and when I got started in the actual space, I was so focused on getting started and getting to know the space and whatnot that I wasn't really thinking about filming. So I did not film me making the digital sketch, really. There's a tiny bit in one of my old vlogs. That's about it. And I didn't film me transferring the sketch onto the wall. I did that with a projector for most of it, and then for part of it I just winged it because I couldn't get the projector to project onto that part of the wall. There was just stuff in the way. So I just used the photo on a laptop as reference, and that worked fine because it was drawn to scale. I drew it to scale by using a combination of measurements of the actual walls and a photo of the wall that I scaled and made sure wasn't skewed from the camera or anything. After I had sketched it out, the very first thing I did was paint the red outlines on all of the trees. It might seem a little weird to do such a fine detail early on, but I really needed to anchor myself. I have never painted a mural before, not in my own home. I've never painted anything larger than about 3 foot wide or long, however you want to think about it. So this is all very, very new to me, and I just knew I needed to go with my gut and not necessarily do things in the right order. So even though I knew I need to go over them later on in order to make them actually look nice, I painted the red lines first. Honestly, I would love to do a mural in the future that's just red lines on white wall. I think it would look so cool. But I wanted this to be a very colorful mural with a sort of dark, moody theme that wasn't too dark. This wall posed a pretty serious design challenge because unlike the one problem where if you have just a big blank wall, you can do kind of whatever you want, I had a wall covered in windows and a sliding glass door. So I had a strip on the bottom, a strip on the top, and these like pillars of wall. So I needed to come up with a design that worked for that shape of wall. And while I did think about it a little bit, the idea came to me pretty quickly. Trees. It just seemed very obvious, maybe because I am so influenced by the applied arts. So that would be things like wallpaper and such, and Art Nouveau. So I was going down rabbit holes of Art Nouveau wallpaper, you know, medieval manuscript illustrations, and eventually my biggest source of inspiration was actually Roman tile work on walls. There are these Roman, what are the tiles called? Frescoes, maybe? I don't know. But it seems like it was a popular motif in ancient Rome among people who could afford it to paint or otherwise illustrate fruit trees on your walls. And these seem to have usually been done as like illustrations of potted plants, like in urns and things, and then they would have the green leaves and all the fruits. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I also wanted it to feel local, so I chose a tree that grows here commonly. People grow it ornamentally all over the place, and I'm really, really fond of it. It's called a strawberry tree. They do not grow strawberries. The fruit does not taste like strawberries. I don't know why, like, I was looking into strawberry trees a while ago, and so many people seemed genuinely upset that the fruit had nothing to do with strawberries, why would you, it looks not, why would you think it would? Um, I don't know, maybe people just don't read enough. But names of things are weird because language has been happening for a long time. Anyway, they're grown ornamentally. They're really gorgeous. They are related to madrona trees or madrone trees. I think it's a regional thing, whether you say it one way or the other. So they've got that splitty bark. It's a little different, but it's got this splitting texture that's like dark red, and they use glossy green leaves and tiny, tiny little white flowers and these round fruits that are the size of like large cherries, and they're these beautiful shades of red and orange. And the flowers and the fruits happen at the exact same time because it takes a whole year for the fruit to ripen. And I just love these trees. They're gorgeous. The fruit is edible. They grow in these really beautiful twisting shapes and have these really lush, dense canopies of leaves. So those were the trees that I was emulating. Obviously, I interpreted them quite heavily, both to fit the space and to create a specific mood, but I'm... This is probably the thing I'm most pleased with in this mural is my choice of strawberry trees, because in the end I think they turned out really good. But I also wanted a twilight scene. I wanted the trees to be very, very dark and the background to be very light, but not like daylight, because I wanted it moody. This is a space for youth, for teenagers. I wanted it to be kind of moody, kind of cool, but also flexible enough that it doesn't look stupid any season that isn't Halloween. Because that's the challenge. If you're in a public space, it needs to be flexible. So it either needs to be really specific to that scene and not really tied to any sort of decor mood, or it needs to be just open enough to interpretation that if you put it against different things, mix different things in for decor, it will look good any time of year. So strawberry trees are kind of perfect for that because they bloom and fruit in fall. Flowers are usually associated with spring, bright colors are usually associated with summer, but they actually bloom and fruit in fall, and they're evergreen, so they're green year-round, and I thought that helped a lot. And then a twilight scene gives you a nice, harmonious, moody palette, and in the wintertime, that's just what it looks like. So I went with a rather unusual purple and yellow sky in the background, and a very blue-green grass underneath. Upon request by one of the people who is in charge of the coffee house, I made it slightly greener. I had a couple of people help me out with just bulk work, so painting in really big swaths of color. You know, I needed to do multiple layers across this entire wall. I can't remember how long it is, but it's quite long, and that's a lot of painting. So having help from Fair and Hannah was a huge help. Those are the two lovely people who helped me. Fair also did these amazing, beautiful swirls on the trees. I initially wanted to do these swirls in a lighter color and then paint around them so that they could get really small and slim. Very tiny cracks to represent the texture of the bark. Unfortunately, I ended up really hating the color, like really hating the color, and so I had to wing it myself afterwards, which is disappointing to me because I think Fair did an incredible job with their swirls. We're just gonna have to settle for mine. I think they look okay. But yeah, initially I wanted the swirls to be a lighter orangey color to represent the lighter colors of bark underneath. I just didn't like it. I thought it looked weird. It looked fine in the digital mock-up, but I just did not like it in the finished one. So this is the only record of those original incredible swirls, and you'll see Fair and Hannah in a couple of shots here. So a comment I got a lot from people when I was talking to them about the mural and about how I was working on the mural and that it was my first mural. A lot of people asked me, "Oh, are you nervous?" And honestly, no. I was not nervous. That might sound cocky to some people. I do think a lot of us experience more anxiety than we otherwise would because it's expected of us. And humans, we really like to do what's expected of us. We love it on some deep little like survival instinct level. But no, I really wasn't nervous about it for the most part. There were a couple things I was nervous about going wrong, but these were very specific. So colors. I didn't know how the colors would work out on the wall. I didn't know if going from a lighted digital screen to a unlighted physical wall that was backlit would work. I didn't know if the colors would translate very well. I also didn't know if my guess for the paint chip color would accurately match the digital sketch. I just had to hope. You know, like we could go back for paint if it was really wrong, but that would suck. So I was nervous about that. I was also nervous about transferring it onto the wall. First mural, I had no clue how to do that. They ended up having a projector I could use, so I just loaded it up onto a laptop they had from my phone. We eventually found a cable to plug that laptop into the projector, and we made it work. So if you're looking for advice for doing this for like a private client who is not going to have all these things to help you, have a plan for that. Have a plan. I talked to them beforehand and they said they had a projector, so I just planned to use that. But if you're planning on doing a lot of murals yourself, I would get a projector yourself or learn how to do the grid method on a large scale. Either one. There are a couple other methods I know about too. These are the only ones I know how to do. So yeah, that's my advice. I mixed the gradient for the sky from 2 different colors. I just went across doing each color, and I worked fast enough, and I covered a little extra space every time that I could blend each mix into the previous color and get a very smooth gradient. And I'm really pleased with how that turned out. I was pretty sure it would work out, but then again, paint swatches, you never know. I wanted these trees to be very twisty and moody, very like the background of a spooky cartoon or something, which sounds very silly, but that's what I wanted. And then I wanted to counterbalance that so it wasn't too intense, too try hard, with these nice pastels that still were very moody because purple, yellow, not like baby blue and whatnot. I really, really love the color of the tree trunks. It's like a dark purpley brown, and it's Bewitched by Benjamin Moore. So if you're looking for a rich, moody, purpley brown, that is the color for you. It's absolutely gorgeous. If I could remember what any of the other colors were, I would tell you because I love all of them and want to paint my house in all of them. The bushes were also a little tricky. I didn't really know how to translate what I'd done in digital to traditional because, again, I'm a watercolor artist, so working digitally or working with opaque paints is a little different for me. But I wanted them sort of backlit slightly from the top so they'd have a little glow at the top and then they'd get darker as they reached towards the grass. And eventually I reached something I was happy with. I think the biggest challenge for me, and it unlocked something, was that I needed to embrace a more painterly form of painting than I normally do. The very, very flat with outline thing that I tend to do with watercolors would look quite bad if done all over in these paints. Because they're so opaque, they're so flat, unlike watercolors, which have that interesting transparency, adding depth, or granulation, or what have you, and then the outlines have a different level of opacity, and that adds interest. These are very, very flat, and so I needed to embrace a much more painterly style, which I eventually reached. I just embraced the large brush strokes and did a very dappled color, and the gradient I did on the bushes had much more sharp intervals to look like layers of foliage as opposed to the sky, which is just light, which is very evenly faded from one color to the next. If you're painting a mural, buy primer. It makes the paint colors so much bolder right from the get-go. It helps a lot. And if you need to go over any other dark colors, it helps so much to have a can of primer just at the ready. So I mixed it with some red to get a tinted primer so that I didn't have to layer over it a bunch, because I was going to do some mixing on a very tiny scale for these, and I did not want to have to layer it. So to paint these fruits, I had a paper plate with the red and the yellow on it, and I just alternatingly dipped my brush into the red or the yellow and did a swoop here and a swoop here, and then I would go over it in the opposite color, mixing to whatever degree I saw fit. I didn't film adding the flowers, which I regret a lot because they're very pretty. Another part of why some things didn't get filmed is because I genuinely thought I was filming when I wasn't. I thought I had clicked the button and I just hadn't. I don't know if it was because my hands were cold, but I would walk away thinking I was filming, and I'd walk back and I'd turn it off, or so I thought, and I realized I had started recording because it wasn't recording initially. So recording in public is just a lot harder. It is so much harder to notice that the camera is not recording if you're not looking in the viewfinder. Also, working on this mural was like a full body workout. I was in just about every position that's possible without several decades of training. I eventually finally started adding the animals, and I started with the barn owl. A detail I forgot to mention that is very relevant to designing this mural. The coffee shop is called The Nest, and it's a branch of a nonprofit called Owl 360. It's a program they run. So it has a very nocturnal owls theme. So I needed at least one owl. I managed to get 3 in. I added strawberry plants around the bottom to kind of nod to the fact that these are strawberry trees, be a little in-joke with myself, and it was an opportunity to add even more bright red to this painting. I painted mice in there. They're a little bit hidden. Spooky eyes in the hole of that one tree because I just never ended up deciding what I was going to put there, and I was like, you know what, I'm leaving it up to the imagination. People can decide what's living in that tree. And I added spooky eyes instead. And behind it, walking right along the bushes in the very background, is a family of raccoons. I painted some baby owls in the other tree hollow. At this point, when we're filming, it is winter in the Pacific Northwest. So despite it being about 3 p.m., when I filmed this, I had to use my phone because it has better range of light adjustment, and my camera was just not picking up any picture. It was black. Had to use my phone for these last final shots, but honestly, it's showing the colors really accurately. So even though it's grainy, I'm pretty happy that I had to use this because I didn't need to use any color correction. That is really what that red looks like. It's that intense. And I'm very happy to have some footage that I think is quite accurate. The trees are a little darker. It is overcorrecting for the dark colors a little bit, but the general colors are quite right. And then we've got some photos taken by Felix. He took some photos for promotional stuff, and he very kindly sent them to me. And I'm going to put in a photo of the tape monster. That was all of the tape. Actually, not all of it. Some of it went into the garbage before I thought about collecting it into a massive pile. It took me 3 months at least. It nearly drove me insane towards the end of it. It destroyed my morning schedule, and I did a lot of things that I would not do if I was doing this again. Not because the mural turned out badly, just because I had to put in a lot of work that I wouldn't have had to otherwise if I had known what I was doing. But ultimately it was worth it. I've got a piece of my art up permanently in public, which was an incredible opportunity. I got to experience applying for an art grant from the city. I got to experience making art in public in front of customers. I got to contribute to making a space for youth support beautiful, and that's something I care about a lot. My town has a really high youth homelessness problem, and a really high percentage of problems for other things for youth. It is the biggest flaw, I think, of my town. And I love my town. And the Nest and Owl 360 provide housing and funding and food support for youth of Port Townsend. So if you're in town, and you want some pretty affordable coffee compared to many other coffee shops, they've got you covered, and the money is going to a really good cause. I really hope you'll support them. I hope you'll go see the mural, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. I apologize for the lighting at the end of it. My life has been a disaster, not just because of the mural. I had other things going on while also dealing with the mural that made my life spiral. This year was kind of insane. I had so much good and so much bad happen at the exact same time, and it was emotionally exhausting and also a very good learning experience. So it's taking me a while to get back on my feet and get back to making videos. Believe me, I really want to. I want to be working so much, but it's gonna take me a little bit. So I'll see you when I see you. Much love. Bye.